moment.
Okay, so we did it in the same format as last year where we listed under column G the budget from last year and the December 2025 actual, and then did an estimate based on the actual. And then just for comparative information, we have information for the prior 2 fiscal years, just so you can see some trends. And we started out, Pete, I think you logged in to get an estimate of the levy.
Yep.
And it's a 2.8% increase, which I think that's about what it's been from year to year. So that number is sort of set. When we look down to grants, we typically don't budget for the grants that comes, I think, from New York State, let's say Library Association, but that's not correct. So we typically don't budget that, and we have been fortunate to get one for the last few years. All other revenue, I guess, in total, it went up by $1,000. Guess the big change is passport fees. I don't think that's changed. We no longer can do passports, right?
Correct. So passports can be 0. Oh,
Yeah, and we had a budget of 7,000 last year, and we've been running about that. But the thing that seems like it's been up for the last couple of years is fees for copy services. So we bumped that up a little bit and made a couple of small changes in the different items to try to be a little more projective. Miscellaneous income, it's kind of sort of some random things in there, and I forgot there was one fairly large item, so we're kind of trying to be a little cautious on that and budget 5,000, the same as last year. Questions on all other revenue or suggestions or? Under operating expenses, I think at our last meeting or 2 meetings ago, or was it last? I think it was last month. Pete presented information on payroll. So we used his numbers there, and it's down budget to budget, and it's down, I think, just slightly from the projected actual in this year. I think the thing that is the biggest changes is when you get into fringe benefits. So we had some, I think, rough estimates that Colleen had on the New York State retirement. We built that in, and it was actually this year it was over budget, the actual. So it looks like a large change. It looks like about a 21% change. Wait a minute, wrong line. Yeah, 21%. Actual to actual, it's about 15%. FICA is just calculated on gross salary. So when gross salary goes down, it decreases. The health insurance, so there's a couple of phenomena on that. I think the plan year runs from December to November. So we got an increase a couple months ago in December. So when you look at the projection based on the December actual, that only has 1 month of the increase. So trying to do a calculation to come up with a number, the annual number. And then we bumped the annual number up, I think almost 20%. But again, we're going to be under budget. So the budget to budget only shows us 10%. But I think we budgeted somewhere between 15 and 20% increase in health insurance, which seems to be the running rate lately. So I guess in fringe benefits, I mean, the two biggest, oh, and let's see if there's anything else. So FICA went down a little bit. Workers' compensation budgeted a little bit less. We're running under budget on that. New York State unemployment, we had a couple of years ago that was very high. And I think that was because there were things in the past and everything as well.
George,
Yeah,
the New York State disability would be zeroed out. Or that's the plan. So we're as a public employer, we're exempt from GDL, and it's not a negotiated benefit.
Mhm.
It came up, someone noticed it, and so on the advice of counsel, we're not gonna carry that.
so starting like pretty quick.
Yeah,
That's about.
yeah, we paid the last quarter for 2025, and that was our last invoice, so that can be zeroed out.
Okay.
You catch it.
Just out of curiosity, did it come up on the, when you look at the Excel, does it have a reserve number?
Still looking at it.
Oh,
It'll
okay.
fascinate, but switch it.
Yeah. It'll really do that, you know? Okay, so that means will be a little less of an increase there. Library materials, I think is,
I feel like it's worth dwelling on the personnel and the fringe benefits for a little bit.
Okay.
because That's the
that's,
vast majority.
that is the
Yeah.
biggest part of it. Oh,
So before we move on, I wanted to open for discussion about anything in there.
Yeah, so just going up to the salaries and wages line there. So that decrease is because we have a couple open positions that we're not filling at the moment.
Right, yeah, we held a couple of vacancies to
Yep.
see what we needed.
Yep.
And so we're trying, like I said in a couple of previous meetings, we're trying to keep it flat, so we're not filling positions if we don't need to fill them. But that said, this is a negotiation year for unit 2, so that will make a difference on what the final number comes out at.
And what kind of assumptions as far as the salary negotiations went into the number that's here?
2% increase.
Okay.
So it's kind of between, not between two areas because we're still negotiating that, but we just want to put something projectable in there.
Yeah.
Because they're a smaller unit, even if we increase it, it won't make a difference. But it's worth, the other thing I want to note is that in last year's budget, we run a little bit higher in terms of capital improvements. Last year's budget, we absorbed all of the salary and benefit increases out of capital improvements. So capital improvements went down significantly. I want to say $100,000.
Mm.
So I always say it's a trick that we can't do forever. But that is someplace where we have a little bit of flexibility depending on how negotiations go. But yeah, it assumes a 2% increase for unit 2. It assumes staying flat with all of our vacancies, and it assumes not hiring new positions, but also not losing anyone. So.
Okay.
But yeah, and that one I think is just, gross payroll period is the largest single budget line that we have. And then when you roll up all the fringe benefits in there, payroll, obviously the lever that we have the most control over. And as George mentioned, as payroll goes up and down, FICA goes up and down, retirement goes up and down, dental, vision, health insurance, we have no control over those numbers. So we're just assuming worst case scenarios. Other questions about payroll or benefits? We can always circle back to it. Sorry, George, didn't mean to.
oh, no, that's okay. So I guess the other fairly substantial number is library materials, which we talked about it, and it's funny when you look at the history, it's, in 23, 24, it was within $4,000 of budget, and 24-25, it was within $4,000 of budget. The final numbers. You always say that it starts out the year kind of slow, and I try to build that in the budget, a gradual ramp up, but usually I don't build enough. So there is heavy expenditures towards the end of the year, and we bumped it up. We bumped the budget up about 2.6%. So professional fees are interesting in a way. So I don't know. So the second line down is the auditor fees. So that number is what we will spend to do the audit for 25, 26. So we're always a year behind on that. And then for the other audits, we're going to accrue those in the year after when each audit was for. So, so it'll spread it out over, the year. Yeah. But that's the biggest decrease, I think, in the professional fee line. Payroll services, I think we changed a year and a half ago or so. Is that right?
January, so yeah,
Almost
a year of change. Yeah.
Okay.
We just changed last year, 2025.
We did. Oh, okay.
January
Oh,
25
it's
was
longer.
first payroll. We talked about it for longer.
Yeah, and we knew it was going to be more expensive. I think we didn't build enough money into the budget for the year we're in. We were a little bit short. So again, we bumped it up about 4% based on the estimated actual. That's the largest increase. There was kind of a I don't want to call it, there was a consulting fee line item that we had a budget for the last couple of years. We haven't spent any money since last year. So we zeroed that out. We didn't know of anything that would fall into that kind of, some sort of consulting work. And the attorney fees, they told me there were 166 a month or something.
Mhm.
There's a little bit extra in there just because from time to time for services that's outside of the retainer. I guess overall, I think professional fees is the one thing that the budget went down from last year.
We were to ever have an architect do some planning for us, would it go in consulting fees, or would we put that in like building maintenance?
Yeah.
So,
It's not an audit, it's not any of those. Where would we put that?
so on the very next page. Yes, so Pete said that there's a proposal for, well, it's labeled existing systems condition report. That I guess we've talked about, right? And
Facilities committee.
facilities. So we did put that under maintenance and repairs. Typically, like if we were doing a project where it would be capitalized, then it would become part of the fixed asset. And I guess we put it there just to kind of break it out. And it seems like it related more to maintenance and repairs, although,
Put that under 59D.
yeah, we put it as a separate line item for this purpose, just so it jumps out, but
But when I mean, for here, but I'm.
yeah. Okay. So utilities, excluding this year, the last couple of years it ran 84 and 86. this year so far, I think all I did was double it. I don't know if there's some seasonal effect there. So it looks like it might be a little bit lower, but we used the same budget as last year just to kind of cover that. And Upper Hudson Library, I think we bumped up about 2.75% over the projected annual. So Pete and I happened to look, he caught it under material supplies. And for whatever, we have to, this is the one area that I think we have to do a little more research on. And because the expenses don't seem to be there. So we want to look at what's been charged in the past just to see what happened to those expenses. And I think, you know, when something's over budget, it's easy to find because you find the item that makes up, you know, the large difference. It's harder when it's not there because you have to go back and see what was there and what went away. But we just want to look at that. So we left the budget the same for now until we can figure out if there's something that has to be moved around on that. So that's the one area that's just open a little bit. And maintenance and repairs. I think we rolled up another line item that we had separate before, and I can't remember which line item it was, but we broke out one of those items, but we just put everything under maintenance and repairs.
And one of them was, two of them were under maintenance and one was under a separate category called repairs.
Yeah,
But that one wasn't actually the repair one, the repair. So we just decided to put them all together.
yeah, it just seemed more logical to
Yeah.
kind of group them together. So, and again, the biggest change in that's the $21,000 that we put in at least as a placeholder.
Pete, if you want to explain it to those that may not be aware with the building. The
Yeah.
condition
The
report.
condition report, yeah, so I gave a proposal from BRM, who did the architects who worked on the renovation. Basically, we staff have been getting caught by surprise by a lot of maintenance issues, burst pipes, bursting skylights. And it is, we've been doing an awful lot of reacting rather than being prepared for some of these things. So the report that we got a quote for from BRM would be for them to do what they call an envelope study. And that's the entire perimeter of the building, the floor, the ceiling, the walls, the windows, the doors, the mechanical systems, the HVAC, basically anything that can break and will be repaired. That will give us a couple of things. It'll give us some certainty that we'll know, like, okay, all of your heat pumps are X years old and they all have a life expectancy of Y years and they cost Z to replace them. So we can do a little bit of math and budget for replacement. And also, hopefully, the secondary thing, we not being surprised by things that go wrong with the building. So if we're aware that the heat pumps are at the end of their life, we won't be surprised when they break. Doesn't make up for some of the things that have already caught us by surprise, and that's an entirely separate pricing model of doing repairs to things that we know need to be repaired. But the hope is just that this gets us out ahead of the future.
So just to, I guess, technology. I know you said there's going to be some, you know, computer replacements next year. So
Yep, we had a request from the head of IT. He's looking at replacing a server and he's looking at, we can either replace all of our public facing PCs or we can do a phased replacement. A phased replacement would obviously be better for the budget, but if a lot of these PCs are near their end of life, we might have to do a little bit more. So we kept, I think the budget, we give a little bit more, but we mostly kept it where it was. just with the assumption that we're gonna have to make these repairs or these replacements rather.
Other program services. We bumped up circulation supplies is running a little bit higher this year. There's definitely programs are running lower, you know, when we project it out, it's still lower. So we'll probably look at that. I mean, there might be a little bit of room in there to bring it down. But I guess we also want to look at to say the seasonality of it, but whether it changes between the first 6 months and the second 6 months.
I would say it's gonna be higher in the summer.
Yeah,
From the reading, but I don't know that that's
Oh,
gonna
that's
get us. I mean, even last year was 18. So
yeah,
we might be closer to last year because we get so much during the summer,
which would
program wise.
June-ish. I mean, because
Yeah, summer readings
I
starts
guess
in
June.
July. I mean, like
Yeah.
the official kickoff is July 1st. But you know, in terms of our seasons being a little bit cyclical programming, we don't do a lot of big programming in the winter. People aren't coming out. So spring, we'll see more large scale programming and then some leading into summer. Like George was saying, we have to look at it a little bit because in theory, a lot of the summer reading expenditures, which should be front loaded, it should be at the beginning of the fiscal year. So we'll look at it, but I would caution against making any large changes just because we need to understand what's going on there and see what the team has planned.
marketing and advertising, we left the same. We're running a little bit favorable right now. Printing and postage, I believe we left the same running. We're running, yeah, pretty close. We increased insurance. I think we talked before. I think I said that that's the one thing that looks like it's gonna be unfavorable by the end of the year. It's been running a little bit unfavorable, so bumped that up. So it looks like we'll spend about 48 this year versus a budget of 43. So we bumped the 48 up to 53. Staff development and travel actually was running maybe closer than I would have expected.
That's an area that we had a hard time spending. That's not reflected in this budget document because we only go back a couple of years. But historically, we had a hard time committing to sending staff to staff development events. And we've really prioritized it the past couple of years. So I expect that to be running not over budget, but much tighter to budget going forward, just because it's a real priority for us. Staff travel being a little bit low, that one's going to fluctuate because the conferences we typically send people to are the New York State Library Association, which will be relatively cheap travel. And then if we send somebody to the American Library Association, the Public Library Association, it's really dependent on where it is.
Yeah.
So, you know, if they hold the conference in San Diego, we either have to send someone or pay for the most expensive air travel we can, or, you know, what it costs. So the travel might be low this year. Last year, it ran high. So that kind of worked out with staff development, but I think ALA is in Chicago. So if we send somebody to ALA, it's a little pricey.
Water and sewer gets paid once a year. I don't know if you've seen an invoice yet for,
Yeah, I think it's been paid. We can see it in there.
well, not through December, maybe January. I didn't look into January just to see, but that's about what it runs. We'll look back and see if we have gotten it. I forgot what month it gets paid in. It's not an annual. Yeah, if you have the It just hasn't been picked up in this.
Residentially, it's May and November.
Yeah, for residential, I think ours is.
We don't get quarterly bills or something, I can't remember. I know the big users, so they send it quarterly.
We never paid, we had two separate bills, one is big and one is small.
Yeah, we'll have to look and see, just see if we're on target. It should be pretty close. It's run about 5,500 in the past, so. Telephone, we actually budgeted a little bit more. We've been running a little bit over budget.
Just, do we have a sense of why that's gone up the way it has? I'm just.
I don't actually. We're gonna have to dig into that paperwork a little bit. I'm not positive why it's going up.
The charges have gone up. We use Harbor Networks for our phone system. And I think those prices have gone up. I mean, it's the two telephones, the two Verizons, wireless and regular, which those have gone up, but it's that Harbor Network one, which is internet too. Cause
Oh,
that's
okay.
like, it's not just telephone. We really should change that to telecommunications, I think, because it's not just telephone, it's telecommunications.
So that's just, we think maybe it's just a rate increase.
Yeah, I don't know if we always worked with Harbor. You'd have to ask Sean, I mean, that's what I've been paying, but
It looks like it's gonna be up slightly from last year, and last year we were a little under on the budget. Equipment leases budgeted. Well, what we're spending. Miscellaneous. It's funny because the budget went up by 75%. Which is sort of misleading because it's probably the smallest line item in total on the entire budget, but. You know. We always seem to have more in the budget than we spend for work development. HR services and staff recruitment, I think you thought that was the
Background checks.
background checks.
Yeah.
So we bumped those up because it does look like we're running a little bit higher. So,
give you the water sewer, we just paid it in January.
oh,
I don't know why
was
it's-
it?
I think it's annual because,
Yeah,
and we paid $4,950.19.
wow, that's down.
Yeah.
One of them, one is literally $14.44. That's for 2242 Western Ave, which must be that piece of property. That's water, and then the main invoice was $4,937.75.
This is now about $500. I suppose we could decrease the budget a little bit if we want. So I think that you didn't open up the Excel file, did you?
Yeah, I did, took a while to open up my laptop, but I have it right here.
Does it have a budget for interest? At the very bottom?
Interest. Column, yeah, I have $120,000. I have it on my printout too.
You have it on your printer?
Yeah,
Oh, you printed.
I printed
Oh,
version
that's an older
4.
one. That's an older one. think.
I printed version 4, there was a 3.
What's the number for the capital reserve? Is it 177?
177,019,
Okay,
That's in column H.
yes.
so those are the two missing numbers.
And what was your interest in? column H?
120,000.
You might be looking at version 3P. Because George sent us a version and then sent us a new version.
Well, I don't want to say that you told me so, but I'm looking at version 4, but a sheet's problem.
Okay.
So,
You want mine?
Outside of them.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know, some years we go through and we make little changes to line items. Last year, we didn't do that so much. There's still a few things that we have to research, but I guess did we say the reserve was 177,
Yeah.
which is budgeted a little bit higher than last year, but lower than prior years. Are you talking about getting a vehicle or is
Yeah.
that somebody else? I'm
We
thinking of?
are, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, there's another.
Many of us, do they want to get a vehicle with us, wherever they are?
Actually, like, they want to do outreach, but a food pantry outreach type thing, so. So I guess if we knew there was an item, we would budget for the cash outlay under the capital reserve. Which would lower it a little bit, but not that much. Oh, and I guess I'd say on the interest, I did the calculation, it says based on cautious cash flow. I think that we projected one decrease in the rate this year, and I projected 2 more decreases. Who knows, but I think it will be more than that. I mean, this year we're running way over budget, so, I think even if the rates drop, it'll be 120s kind of a minimum number, even if
Yeah,
everything falls apart.
it's a pretty big drop. If we're projecting 172 for this year, then 120s are pretty substantial.
So this year, I know we started out about 4%. To look at that and just see what the average rate is this year versus what I budgeted.
Right.
I think we were very cautious on the budget this year because we didn't know what the rates were gonna be because we're way over budget on interest.
Can I just out of curiosity, this is, the existing systems condition report that we talked about before. Do we have a, idea on timeframe of when we would think that would be done? I'm just thinking ahead of for future budget cycles, like how quickly could they do that kind of full audit of the, systems and building and all that stuff?
Yeah, preliminary conversations I had with BRM, it was a little bit of, we have to fit into their schedule. They were like, we can book you out a couple months.
Okay.
I don't think it would take them more than a couple months to do it.
Okay.
What they asked me was, they're like, do you need this done this fiscal year? And I was like, I don't think so. And they were like, okay, good, because that would have been tight.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming it's about a 6 month.
Yeah.
If they thought they could do it this fiscal year, it would have been 6 months or less.
Yeah.
But I think we would definitely have it for next year's budget.
Right. I'm just, it's just, part of this goes to the reserve proposal that I had put out there that's kind of just hanging there that we haven't really moved forward on. And, I think, one of the things we've talked about is having a better sense of the future major kind of capital, costs that we're going to be bearing, which is what this report, this condition report will kind of feed into. So we can kind of start projecting and saying, well, in the next X number of years, this system will probably need replacement, or this is starting to show its age, and we're gonna have to do that, and we can start kind of building a little timeline and figuring out, because we know that we have right now, we have, some substantial reserves currently. We have a couple very large expenses looming here, the skylight and maybe the Mercy Care lane, things that are gonna, maybe really, deplete what we've got there. And then we have, if we look at our reserve line, line 27 here, and historically we had been, packing away, something more in the ballpark of, 250,000 a year in that. And again, that wasn't anything that had been carefully budgeted. This was just a kind of balance term that, that was coming out in the end of what was left over after we had done all the other budget lines. But, this year, we're projecting, or our budget was only 120, some of which we've actually spent on, current expenses. So it's not extra. That's going to, it looks like, right now with 26 is assigned to that. So that means we have less than 100 that we're putting into it. And we're going to be down to 177 next year, which is, again, more than this year's budget, but less than we historically had. So, we're putting less in, and we've got some major expenses coming out of that. And so I think we just need to, hopefully, maybe for next year, we'll be in a position where we can be looking at all of these future expenses going forward, kind of all, this stuff, and kind of starting to build this number on the basis of real numbers, and not just kind of whatever's left over goes in there. And it's just kind of a, and then that might make us have to, make some further decisions, when we look, because we might be setting ourselves up to, possibly, some lean, issues in the future if we deplete down this reserve, and then we have other systems and things that need to be replaced coming forward, or whatever. We're not putting that much more into it, but who knows? But right now, we just don't have solid hard numbers on any of that stuff yet.
And believe me, I invoked your name several times in facilities to be like, this is what Mike's been talking about. We need this data so we can make these decisions.
Yeah, I have to, I'll get around to it. I'm going to circulate that. I might just look at it and see if anything needs updating or whatever, but kind of circulate it again just to get it back on our kind of everybody's back in consideration, so we can kind of try and move that forward. Because at least maybe between with this report, the systems condition report coming in, and we've already been talking about the budget issues that we have with rising labor costs, and then now we have these capital issues and all these things. Maybe this is kind of the impetus we need to kind of get this over the finish line, and then be able to have fuller real planning that's longer term and kind of more comprehensive going forward for next year.
I don't know if it's because they're estimates and it's just difficult to come up with an estimate and put in the capital into a reserve, which just kind of convolutes things. But I mean, it's just, I think it would be good to show a separation of the net assets, just so that if you were to look at it, you don't see a number that continues to go up every year. And I guess the one number that it would be an estimate, but it would be a calculated estimate, is we know that between June 1st and when the first tax levy comes in, which is what, November-ish?
Yeah,
Late October, November. We have July, August, September, and we have 4 months of expenses that we have to do. So we know that at the end of the year, you have to have at least 4 months. And I did a calculation one time, and it's just, you look at the budget and you can figure it out pretty easily. But I mean, that's something that it doesn't seem like it would take a lot to just, do that calculation and put that on our financial statements. And
Yeah,
it might
yeah,
be easier.
I,
now.
I agree. I don't know how you would, what you label that or how you call that, but yeah, I mean, right now, we've got, in the bank, we've got all our, like the
Yeah.
money we've got in our, investments and everything, that, this total dollar value for all of that. Now, some portion of that is the rest of this year's budget that carries out of the, to the end
Yeah.
of June. Then we've got what you're talking about, which is,
Yeah.
called the float or whatever, that's our, like, the amount we need to cover us until the next tax levy. So that's just the amount we have to keep in there as a buffer.
Right.
But then once we have, the remaining,
Then,
the rest of this year's, that buffer that carries us through till the tax levy, everything left over in there, that's like our actual reserve, the real reserve that we can, that we're saving for various purposes for, these emergencies and problems, and also
Yeah.
future down the road, important, expenses, things like that, whatever. Yeah, it probably would be good to kind of break it out like that, just so everybody really see.
Definitely, we had some name for it because it was on their budget where they say like, we have to have at least this much money. So and you're probably talking 4 months, a third of probably 1.3 million or something that,
Right.
I mean, if we ever get to a point where it gets close on that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, because that's really untouchable money because if we go below that, then we end up going broke before our tax bill
Yeah,
comes in
or-
the following year.
Borrowing money to get there, which
Yeah.
is do. but-
Yeah, but we don't want that. I mean,
No.
that's bad.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I like the idea. I mean, the more kind of transparency we can give about, our actual financial state with, as much as we know about, and that's, like you said, that's an extremely predictable number. On the
yeah,
basis of a
It's-
budget, we can say, this is our
everything
budget, we
else
can
is,
really predict, like, we have this many months till our tax levies come in, so that's like something we can really. Yeah. All
I
right.
think when I mean, then at least you can do a calculation and show the numbers and you have 100% confidence that that's the way, but whereas when you get into estimates, they're gonna be pretty.
Yeah.
I think we would call them swag, sort of sophisticated guesses, so. So I'm thinking, we're gonna make the change for the New York State disability. And,
We need to research that material supplies.
yeah, materials.
Well, it's not another line that's out of whack. I thought maybe sometimes circulation
Yeah.
supplies, but it's not. It doesn't make up the difference.
I think there's a couple places we can look to see if it's popped up somewhere else. As George likes to say, the budget's a waterbed, you push down somewhere else, it pops up somewhere else.
Yeah, it's not.
But it's not popping up anywhere. So,
But it was, I have to look at 20, around 24 and 20, because it was 33, and it was 29, so we'll have to look back at what was in there making up for that.
Oh, we'll talk after. I think I know the answer.
Okay.
Is it possible that any of that was because
I'm wondering if it came from the vendor disruption with us switching between Maker and Taylor and Ingram, because Ingram does not provide all the same processing that Baker and Taylor do. So I bet it's that.
And that goes under those lines rather than under the library materials line?
Correct. Library materials are the book and then the
Right.
supplies, everything that goes on it.
Got it.
So
Okay.
it could be that.
If
When
we,
did that start happening? I
if
can't
we
remember.
paid,
Here.
Maybe.
but if we, that would make that go up. Materials, when we buy materials that are pre-processed, that's on they're all billed as materials. Yes,
Okay.
the invoice just as materials. If they stopped providing that and we were buying more stuff to do our own
Then that
physical
line.
processing, this line would go up.
Okay. Well, then I'm wrong and I don't want to keep speculating. So let's see what I look for it.
I think I can think of a circulation supply. We'll do a little study of that, figure that out.
Trying to think, we have a board meeting next week, but the goal was to present it by the following month, right? Remind me.
No, so we have another one of these meetings.
Next Tuesday.
Next week, and then the board meeting on Thursday after that, so I
Oh,
think.
we are gonna present it this month.
I think that's what we did today.
Oh,
and
yeah.
next week.
Yeah, the hope is that next Tuesday we'll have something that's, we'll be able to finish it so that on
Yeah.
Thursday we can present it, so that we give a month before we're actually voting.
Yeah,
Oh, and then not vote until the following
We,
month.
right, so we present it next week,
Mhm.
we'd vote on it at the March meeting.
Okay.
And then we have to
And
get
then-
to the school district.
Right,
yeah.
right. Because if we don't vote on it on the March meeting, we would need a special meeting to get it done in time for to give it to the school, to get on the ballot next week.
And I have a note to myself that when we do approve it, there's some language we have to have
Yes.
about the cap.
Yes.
Maybe everybody's got it now.
I don't have it, but
We've gotten on record
used it
last
before,
year.
yeah.
Yeah.
We have to vote on that before we vote on the budget. So like there is actually.
oh, there's no order of things. All right.
But yeah, so there's only, I think this is doable. There's a couple of lines that we need to research, but, I know I kept threatening that this budget year would be more interesting than last year. I think in terms of things that I've asked for at one-time costs, it's more interesting, which is not reflected in the annual budget because they're this year. But, to everyone's possible delight, I think it did end up being a relatively boring budget again. So,
Looking at Bethlehem's budget. And the way they have it, it looks like they're just calling it fund balance. And they do mark out the 1,350,000, and it just says operations from July until taxes received.
Okay.
So they separated out, not with a name or description, and then the rest of it is designated for capital expenditures and building needs in conjunction with the library's water expense. I do like that it splits it out with that 1.35 million. That
Yeah.
is just for that. That's, I think, a really good idea.
I remember seeing that. and thinking, oh, that's
Yeah.
interesting. So Tuesday, I didn't ask, but we should have financial statements by then, right?
You do. Everything's reconciled.
Oh, everything's, okay, so I just have to.
Yeah, I was like,
Be up to me.
all right,
Next Tuesday. In a month,
everything's reconciled, and
couple of days.
I didn't get check register, so I'm still writing checks, so.
but yeah, unfortunately, next week's meeting, we do have to do both things. We have to do the budget and we have to do our normal business.
Yeah. I remember the discussion being real long last year. I mean, I don't think it was.
It's almost like a good this or something.
No. Maybe I wore a suit just so people would trust, the numbers. Every once in a while I do that. All right.
Yeah, do my tricks.
Yeah, I'll say something about that. Words.
Yeah, you just-
Like that was recorded, like a
Yeah.
The suit trip.
But disposable will be one.
Right, yes, yeah.
All right.
Well, we can-
Tony, you
yeah, I
wanna
think
call
we're
it? Okay.